Welcome. Nice to have you, Mike. How are you doing?
Very well, sir. It's great to see you again, as always. How are you?
Good to see you too. Yeah, not bad, thank you. Got some questions for you today about a wide range of subjects. So let's jump in. So if you were starting out as a game composer today, what three things would you do to get yourself up and running?
I would first get familiar with the industry and get up to speed on how the industry works and how game audio works. And there's two books that I recommend. The Aaron Marks Guide to Game Audio, fantastic book. Buy it, read it, mark it up. Winifred Phillips's Guide to Game Music, awesome. The second thing I do is I would put together a ruthlessly tight audio setup system, and just don't chase the big, latest and greatest fads. Build yourself a functioning computer with good quality instruments to enable you to get up and get music running quickly. Don't chase the huge trailer stuff. Get yourself up and running and keep your debt under control. And the third one that I would do that you will love is immediately start building an online presence through Facebook, webpage, YouTube, Instagram. Start putting yourself out there and using the online world to showcase your music and your services you provide.
Brilliant. Oh, good advice. So what is the most overlooked skill a game composer should have?
You're going to hate this. The most overlooked skill is understanding contracts. Nobody takes the time to learn how to do contracts, and you should. It's not hard, and maybe it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but you need to know what happens if you're working for Square Enix, what's buried in that 30-page thing. So learn how to read contracts. Aaron Marks' book covers that a little bit. And guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to get yourself an entertainment lawyer at some point. So just know that you're going to have to learn that skill and learn how to read contracts, how to put one together, and how to word them so you're protected.
Oh, good advice, because overlooked things like that can be really expensive.
Yes, and emotionally draining, emotionally crippling. Yeah.
I bet. I mean, my goodness me, when that goes wrong, that's not good. What would you say is the biggest challenge in scoring video games?
I think the biggest challenge is understanding that it is not linear, but that it is interactive and that you are creating a web of layers of music and connective music, and your workspace when you're planning your music out looks more like a mind map than it does a spreadsheet, especially as you get into more deep indie games and even AAA stuff where you've got branching. So again, those books will help you start to organize that, and there's lots of other books you can get on interactive music, but that's the challenge. Everyone goes, oh, it's a playable movie. No, it's not. It's don't fool yourself. It's not.
That is so true. And what is the difference when it comes to scoring mobile games compared to PC or console games?
The biggest difference is that there's a couple of big differences. One good, one not so good. The mobile games tend to be more simple, and they tend to be focused more on like a classic game loop, which if you're a jazz composer, it makes it very easy to write very effective bits of music, because just like a jazz piece, which, is 32 bars and it loops back in. I mean, jazz basically is a game loop. So you tend to write very charming character pieces that are harmonically very tightly written, as opposed to PC and AAA games, where it tends to be a much more interactive web, and you're really manifesting lots of different layers and things are coming in and out, which is a fun challenge, but it's a big difference in how you approach the piece of the project. The other big difference is that mobile games are often an evolving, never-ending ecosystem, because they're all about kind of the game as a service. So you're kind of constantly having to reinvent and retranslate what you've written before as the newer expansion comes out or as the seasonal expansion come out. So you're kind of, it can be a bit creatively stretching when you're like, how many different ways can I translate this theme, or how many ways can I orchestrate it so that it's still sounding fresh? Whereas PC and Steam games, not always, but by and large, tend to be the product, and you pay X money and you get the product, and your work on that is done. So those are the two big differences that I see between mobile games and kind of PC or console games.
Brilliant. And what are some common mistakes that you see new composers make often?
They don't know how to read they don't know how to write contracts. We already covered that. The most common mistake a new composer would make when entering the world of game music would be not working on their production skills and thinking that their composition skills will cover it. Those days are gone. You should be a good composer. I pride myself on the fact that I can write to the orchestra score, but it took me until my mid-40s to get my production to a spot where I was feeling pretty comfortable with it. I think that's worth your time to go buy a couple of Groove 3 libraries on mixing and mastering, do one of the ThinkSpace short courses on mixing, just like start to work on your production immediately.
Brilliant. And what do you do to get yourself inspired and motivated before working on a new project?
Usually a bottle of Aberlour Scotch.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. One of our buddies over at ThinkSpace has been pitching that. What do I do to get inspired and motivated? I asked to get as much creative content from the team as possible. Pictures, descriptions of the towns, maybe even just an early concept art, maybe some early gameplay playthroughs. And I just drink in the magic of this game. And I do that for a chunk of time, and then that gets me all hyped up. Then I go and do something different for a while. I'll go do boxing, or I'll go take the dog for a walk. And then I come back, and now I've gotten excited from the gameplay, and my body and mind have been marinating on that for a couple of hours. And then the magic starts to go.
Brilliant. If you could instantly acquire a new skill, what would it be and why?
If I could instantly acquire a new skill, that's a tough one because I have so many skills. You know what I'd love to do? I would love to, and I'm actually trying to learn it. I would love to instantly really understand how to design games. Now, I know it sounds silly because I'm working in games, but it's like, no. When I see what some of my friends do when they're balancing enemy damage, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons thing, or they're balancing level design where it's like risk reward and where are the points where the person is almost out of health and they can recover and all that. I think that's just magic. I don't understand how people can. My friend who's a game designer can take colored chips and work out a mechanic and then build, a tactical starship fighting game. It's so cool. So yeah, deep game design, like that.
That's a cool one. And with game music, how is game music different in what it does when compared to film or television music?
I have been deep diving and deep reflecting on this for the last 6 months, so I've got a really interesting answer that I think is kind of cool. This might be a webinar. Every music for media is the juxtaposition of two things. The format of the media and the narrative wrapper it's on, or WRAP. So what I mean by that is writing film music. If you're writing a horror, you're dealing with the tropes of horror, right? Which is, the narrative of horror, which is, some big bad evil happens, various people get killed, there's revelations about it. And the genre of the horror, is it sci-fi horror like Event Horizon? Is it, body horror? Is it Rosemary's Baby, which is religious horror? So those two interact, right? So it's like the narrative and the wrapper. In games, it's the narrative, the wrapper, and the gameplay loop. And that's way different. So what I mean is people will say things like this. Well, I want you to do fantasy music. I'm like, okay, well, what kind of fantasy music? Is it a first-person brawler like Skyrim? That's a different loop than a tactical motion game like War Mages, where it's almost like a chessboard, right? Or Heroes of Might and Magic. Or is it fantasy like League of Legends, which is a MOBA where there's a fast combat loop where you have little bursts of adrenal energy, and the music needs to support that because it's supporting both the narrative and the gameplay. And that's way different than film and television. And it's something that I think is a real important. The further along the composers figure that out, the faster they get that, the better they're going to be as game composers.
Brilliant.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
It's really interesting, actually. I never heard it put that way, but I think that's a really, really good way of getting that point across, actually. I might use that one myself.
Go for it. You have my permission.
So what are you reading about or studying or learning at the moment?
Funny enough, I've taken a break from it, but I have Jesse Schell's book, A System of Lenses, a book on game design. So I'm reading right now. I'm studying a couple of things. I'm reading about game design. A friend of mine, Heather Chandler, who's a top-notch game producer, released a game production book. So I'm reading about that just to kind of get more into it. And I am doing a deep dive into Japanese video game music and Japanese anime music, and like trying to figure out why the sound is what it is. It's a series of like what harmonies are chosen and why, and kind of the articulations chosen. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Oh, and then also, of course, learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, of course, because these arms aren't gonna armbar themselves, right? But the last thing I'll say about that is, as we're in our world, I think you do the same thing. We keep one thing physical in your world to kind of burn off some nervous energy, and just bike riding, playing basketball, whatever. Just do something almost every day just to kind of burn off the nervous energy. It's just good for the soul.
That is good. Yeah. And I mean, your mental health and your physical health, but you can't put a value on that. And I think that's really, really good advice to end on. So for all of our watchers, go out for a run, go and do something physical, and get back in your studio and write something really good.
Absolutely.
Good advice, right? Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Mike. Always good to have you. We look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, sir. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.